The mysterious note that changed everything. The house was silent that cold December morning in Boulder, Colorado. Snow blanketed the streets, muffling every sound except the faint hum of Christmas lights still twinkling on the Ramsey family home. Inside, something was terribly wrong. Patsy Ramsey, dressed in her robe, stood frozen at the foot of the staircase, holding a piece of paper that trembled in her hands. It wasn't a Christmas card. It wasn't a note from a neighbor. It was something else, something strange. Her eyes darted across the page, the words twisting her stomach into knots. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. The handwriting was neat but uneven, as if written in a rush. The message demanded $118,000, an oddly specific number. And it ended with chilling instructions not to contact the police, warning that if they did, their daughter, 6-year-old JonBenét, would be killed. Patsy screamed. The sound pierced the quiet halls, waking John Ramsey and their son Burke. John ran down the stairs, alarmed. In her shaking hands, Patsy shoved the letter toward him.
"They took her," she cried.
They took JonBenét. But when John rushed to her bedroom, the bed was empty, blankets rumpled, pillows tossed aside. The room felt cold, the window slightly open. The little girl who just performed in a Christmas beauty pageant 2 nights before was gone. He froze. Something felt wrong. The note wasn't outside or slipped under a door. It was on their kitchen staircase, written on paper from their own notepad. Someone had been inside the house. Within minutes, Patsy dialed 911. Her voice cracked, panic spilling out in every word. "Please hurry. We have a kidnapping. Our daughter's gone." But as officers and friends began arriving, the scene grew more chaotic. The ransom note, still clutched in John's hand, was unusually long, nearly 3 pages. It didn't sound like a typical ransom demand. It was full of strange phrases, movie references, and emotional outbursts. "Don't try to grow a brain, John," one line read. Another said, "If you speak to anyone, JonBenét will die." Yet there was no sign of forced entry, no footprints in the snow, no broken locks or shattered glass. And as hours passed with no phone call from the so-called kidnappers, a heavy dread filled the Ramsey home. At 1:05 p.m., John Ramsey disappeared into the basement, one area police hadn't fully checked yet. Moments later, a cry echoed through the house. It was the sound of a father's horror. There, in a small windowless room, lay JonBenét. She was wrapped in a white blanket. A piece of duct tape covered her mouth, and her hands were tied. Next to her was a broken paintbrush, and around her neck, a homemade garrote. The bizarre ransom note, the lack of signs of struggle, the strange behavior, all suddenly collided in one sickening truth. The child had never been kidnapped at all. And yet, the mystery was just beginning. Police cordoned off the house, but by then, dozens of friends and neighbors had already walked through it, contaminating the scene. Detectives studied the note over and over, trying to make sense of it. Why $118,000, an amount identical to John Ramsey's recent work bonus? Why so many pages for a ransom letter? And how could someone have written it inside the house without being noticed? Investigators began to wonder, was this an outside intruder, or had someone within the family staged it all? The handwriting analysis came back with no clear match. The notepad and pen used were confirmed to be from the Ramsey home. Patsy's handwriting looked similar, but not exact. Public suspicion began to swirl like the Colorado snow. Television trucks lined up outside the Ramseys' gated home, reporters whispering theories. Neighbors argued over what they believed had really happened that night. Then, in a shocking twist, the police discovered something hidden in the note. Phrases and style lifted directly from famous crime movies, including Dirty Harry and Speed. It was almost theatrical, as if someone wanted the letter to sound dramatic. Was this a real ransom demand, or a cover-up? The more they looked, the less sense it made. When questioned, John and Patsy insisted on their innocence. They loved JonBenét deeply, but their strange behavior didn't help their case. John flew to Atlanta days later. Patsy refused to be questioned separately from her husband. Meanwhile, forensic teams searched the basement, the yard, and even the neighborhood, looking for footprints, fingerprints, anything. But nothing fit. The only DNA found was under JonBenét's nails and on her clothing, and it didn't match anyone in the family. The longer the case dragged on, the more divided everyone became. Some were convinced the parents knew more than they were saying. Others believed an unknown intruder had somehow slipped in and out without leaving a trace. And through it all, the ransom note, the so-called mysterious note that changed everything, remained at the center. Even experts couldn't agree on who had written it. The language seemed oddly personal, like the writer knew John Ramsey. It used words like carefully, respect, and good Southern common sense, phrases that felt too specific to be random. Every clue pointed in a different direction. By the end of that first terrible week, the Ramseys were living in a fog of suspicion and grief. The media stormed their lives, neighbors avoided eye contact, and investigators worked tirelessly but fruitlessly. In a world full of theories, one truth stood clear. Whoever wrote that note wasn't just leaving words on paper. They were leaving a puzzle so strange it would haunt America for decades. But just when the investigation seemed frozen, a single new clue would appear. Something small, something overlooked, that would set off another wave of chaos. And it would once again come from inside the Ramsey house. The snow outside had long melted by the time the case of JonBenét Ramsey turned from tragedy into obsession. Months passed, then years, yet the question remained the same. Who wrote the note, and who killed JonBenét? By 1997, the Boulder Police Department had spent thousands of hours chasing leads, testing handwriting, and re-interviewing witnesses. The mysterious ransom note still sat in a sealed evidence bag, 3 pages of confusion, fear, and deliberate deceit. Investigators knew it wasn't written by a professional kidnapper. It was emotional, erratic, and filled with contradictions. But what if the writer had been close to the family? A task force was formed to re-examine every part of the night before Christmas. The officers went through each timeline, each call, and each movement in the Ramsey house. They looked again at the ransom note. The first words of the letter echoed in the room as they read aloud. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. Those words weren't random. They were commanding, almost theatrical. One detective noted how unusual it was that the note demanded such a small amount, $118,000, nearly the same as John Ramsey's recent work bonus. A coincidence? Or personal knowledge? Investigators kept coming back to the same chilling possibility. Whoever wrote the note knew the Ramseys very well. The public had their own theories. Television shows and newspapers painted Patsy Ramsey as suspicious, the mother with a pageant queen daughter who might have snapped under pressure. Others claimed John had covered something up to protect the family name. But none of it was proven. Every time investigators thought they were close, the evidence refused to fit. The ransom note contained a mixture of feminine and masculine traits in its wording. Forensic linguists said it sounded like someone trying too hard to sound threatening. It was the ultimate deception. Still, something about the handwriting gnawed at experts. Some letters, the way R and Y were written, resembled Patsy's. But there were differences, too deliberate to be dismissed as coincidence. Meanwhile, the Ramseys were fighting to clear their names. They appeared on national television, pleading for justice. "We did not kill our daughter," John said firmly during one interview. But the public wasn't convinced. Then, a shocking twist reignited the case. In 2003, DNA testing had advanced enough to reanalyze the evidence collected from JonBenét's clothing. For years, the samples had been too small or too degraded. But now, new technology could detect even trace amounts. When the results came back, the detectives froze. The DNA under JonBenét's fingernails and on her underwear didn't match anyone in the Ramsey family. It belonged to an unknown male. For the first time, it seemed possible that the Ramseys had been telling the truth all along. Investigators began searching national databases, hoping for a match, a criminal record, a repeat offender, someone connected to the area. But nothing came up. The DNA belonged to no one in the system. Then came another revelation, one that added even more confusion. A handwriting expert discovered that the ransom note wasn't written all at once. The pressure marks on the paper showed pauses, as if the writer had started and stopped multiple times, changing their tone halfway through. It was part businesslike threat, part personal plea. It was as if two personalities were battling on the page. As the years passed, new detectives joined the case, and old theories resurfaced. The ransom note still felt like the key. Many began to believe it wasn't written to demand money at all, but to buy time. Whoever wrote it needed to delay discovery of the crime. The long, rambling message ensured that Patsy would spend precious minutes reading it instead of checking on JonBenét right away. If that was true, the writer wasn't an outsider. It was someone who knew the Ramseys' habits, the layout of their house, and where to place the notes so it would be found first thing in the morning. In 2010, a new district attorney reopened the investigation. Fresh eyes, fresh technology, and new interviews. The ransom note was digitally analyzed using modern linguistic software. The program broke down word frequency, structure, and syntax, comparing it against millions of writing samples. The result? A 90% linguistic similarity between the ransom note and Patsy Ramsey's known writing. Yet, without a direct match, it wasn't enough for an arrest. The case remained in limbo, a puzzle with too many missing pieces. As time passed, the Ramsey family grew older, but the shadow of that morning never faded. Patsy fought cancer for years and passed away in 2006, still insisting she had nothing to do with the note or her daughter's death. John Ramsey continued his quest to clear the family name. He worked with private investigators and even offered rewards for information. But every clue led to another dead end. Then, in 2016, a new documentary brought public attention back to the ransom note. Linguists, behavioral analysts, and former FBI agents all studied it again. They agreed on one chilling point. Whoever wrote it had a personal connection to the family and was desperate to cover something up. Even the smallest details carried meaning. The note was signed Victory, SBTC, initials that to this day have never been decoded. Some believe it stood for Saved by the Cross. Others thought it was a cryptic taunt. But why would someone use such an odd signature unless it meant something only they understood? Forensic psychologist Dr. Henry Lee once said, "This case is like a mirror. Every time you think you see the truth, it shows you something different." By now, decades had passed. But one final clue was about to resurface, something buried in the digital archives, unnoticed for years. In 2022, a cold case analyst reviewing old photos of the ransom note noticed something strange, a faint indentation on one of the pages, as if the pen had pressed through onto the notepad beneath it. Forensic scanners enhanced the marks, revealing what looked like the beginning of another message, one that had been abandoned or torn out before the final version was written. The unfinished line read, "If you ever want to see her again." It was shorter, more direct. The tone was different, colder, more realistic. Could it have been the first draft of the ransom note? If so, it might mean the writer had panicked, rewriting it to sound more foreign and theatrical after realizing the first version sounded too personal. Investigators sent the images to a forensic handwriting team for further analysis. The indentations were faint, but legible. And the formation of certain letters, the looped R, the curved Y, again pointed toward a familiar hand. A name the public had whispered for years. But before any announcement could be made, one of the analysts made a chilling observation. The pressure of the pen strokes on that unfinished note matched the tremor of someone trying to disguise fear, not malice. It wasn't just a cover-up. It was desperation. Someone in that house had written the note out of terror, not guilt. Was it possible that the ransom note had been real at first, but the story changed later? Could someone have tried to save JonBenét and failed? The discovery reopened every old wound, every unanswered question. And then, one quiet morning in Boulder, a new lab result came in from the re-examined DNA. For the first time in 25 years, it was a partial match. Not to John, not to Burke, not to anyone in the Ramsey circle, but to a man who had once lived within a few blocks of the family in 1996. The case that had haunted America for decades suddenly had life again. The note, the DNA, the missing link, Everything pointed toward something bigger. But before investigators could make their move, the man vanished. He was gone, leaving behind one chilling message on social media. "You've been looking in the wrong house." And just like that, the case of JonBenét Ramsey was thrown back into chaos. The ransom note that once seemed like a lie had perhaps told a truth no one wanted to believe, a truth buried under fear, confusion, and time. The story wasn't over. It was only getting darker.